Ever catch yourself thinking, there's got to be more to life than this? And I don't just mean more to do, but like a deeper sense of who we are, at our core.
Well, that's what we're diving into today. This idea that how we understand ourselves, it isn't static. It like evolves over time.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, we're not just talking about your everyday personality tweaks here. We're talking about fundamental shifts in how we perceive ourselves and our connection to, well, everything.
It's true. And what's cool is we've got a guidebook for this deep dive, a text called Intelligence and the Light of Truth. Now, before you think this is going to be some dry philosophical lecture, let me tell you, it's surprisingly relatable. It connects these dots between what modern psychology is learning and spiritual concepts, particularly those found in Mormon theology, to paint a really compelling picture of human development. Okay, I like where this is going. So where do we even begin?
Well, the text dives right in, suggesting that we go through distinct stages of development. But we're not talking just physically here.
Right.
We're talking about how we define our very sense of self.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
It starts out pretty basic, just like when we're kids.
Makes sense. Everything is new then. How does the text describe it?
Absolutely. Remember how a child might describe themselves? I'm Tommy, I have brown hair, I like trucks. It's all very concrete, observable, rooted in the physical world around them.
Makes sense. Their world is very much what they can see and touch. But then we grow up and things get a little more complex, right?
Exactly. The I am Tommy part, that might stay the same. But the things we use to define ourselves become more, well, nuanced. We begin to identify with our thoughts, our beliefs, our values, things you can't necessarily see with your eyes.
Okay, so it's like we're peeling back layers of an onion here. We're going beyond the surface level of this is what I look like, this is what I like.
And the text actually gives this great example tied to faith. Think about how a young child in the LDS faith might naturally say, I am a child of God.
Right.
It's concrete, relatable. Someone looks like a child.
Right. It's something they can easily grasp. So how does that understanding of self, like within a faith system, how does that evolve as someone grows?
Well, as their thinking matures, they might resonate more with, I am a Latter-day Saint. And this statement requires understanding, like a belief system, an internal commitment. You can't see someone as Latter-day Saint just by looking at them, right?
Right.
It's about something deeper.
So we're shifting from a definition of self based purely on observable traits to one rooted in internal beliefs and values. We're getting to the core of who we are. But then the text takes us even further, right, to this idea of the causal tier.
That's where it gets really fascinating. Imagine experiencing this fundamental shift in your perception. And it's not about suddenly gaining superpowers or anything like that.
Okay, good to know.
Instead, you begin to see the interconnectedness of all things. Not through some mystical ability, but just through a profound clarity of awareness. You start to identify with awareness itself.
Okay, I can see where this is going, and I'm already intrigued. So tell me more about this causal tier. What does that actually mean for how someone experiences the world?
Think of it like this. Instead of seeing yourself as separate from the world around you, you begin to experience this sense of oneness with everything. The boundaries between me and not me, they become more fluid.
Wow, okay. It's like you're tapping into a universal consciousness or something. That's a pretty profound shift in perspective.
It really is. And the text highlights that when psychologists first started studying people who seemed to be operating at this causal tier, they were stumped. These individuals described their experiences in ways that, challenge traditional scientific understanding of the self.
I can imagine. So it wasn't just some philosophical idea. These were real people actually living from this expanded awareness. What's so fascinating is how the text bridges this psychological observation with Mormon theology.
Yeah, and it does that beautifully. It points to a passage in the Doctrine and Covenants which actually aligns perfectly with this concept. It reads, "Man was also in the beginning with God. Intelligence, or the light of truth, was not created or made, neither indeed can be."
So it's suggesting that this light of truth, this awareness that connects us to everything, it's fundamental to who we are as humans. It's not something we create, but something we tap into.
Exactly. And it emphasizes that from a Mormon perspective, spirit and matter aren't separate entities, but different expressions of the same fundamental substance. This idea that everything is ultimately interconnected, that's key to understanding the connection the text draws between spiritual understanding and what those psychologists were observing.
It's like realizing we're all made of the same cosmic fabric. But let's get practical for a moment. If someone reaches This causal tier, this state of expanded awareness, what does that actually look like in everyday life? Are they like walking around radiating some kind of spiritual aura?
That's one of the things the text emphasizes. People at this stage, they aren't necessarily walking around doing telekinesis or anything. They're described as being surprisingly ordinary.
Really? That's kind of refreshing to hear.
It's not about outward signs or, supernatural abilities, but about a deep inner shift in how you experience the world. The text describes them as having this profound sense of peace, a deep connection to all things, a sense of awe and wonder that kind of permeates even the most mundane moments.
So it's less about what you do and more about how you perceive and experience the world around you.
Precisely. And the text emphasizes that this expanded awareness naturally gives rise to greater compassion, empathy, understanding even, or maybe especially, for those who might be considered difficult by most people.
That reminds me of that teaching from the Sermon on the Mount, love your enemies, bless them that curse you.
It's interesting you say that because the text actually connects those very teachings of Christ to this idea of reaching a higher stage of development. It's like Christ is saying, grow, expand your capacity for love until you can hold even your perceived enemies in your heart.
That puts a whole new spin on things. It's not just about following rules, but about evolving our consciousness, our very way of being in the world.
And remember that idea of interconnectedness we talked about.
Yeah.
The text suggests that when we start to see past that illusion of separateness, we begin to experience the world through what the scriptures call purer eyes, recognizing that spark of the divine in everyone and everything.
So this sense of peace, this expanded love and compassion, it comes from tapping into that deeper understanding of our interconnectedness.
Exactly. It's not about denying the challenges of life, but about facing them with a more profound understanding of our own nature and our relationship to everything around us. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
That makes a lot of sense. But there's a part in the text where it throws in this really important caveat. It's not enough to simply reach this higher stage of development.
Right. It's like climbing to the top of a mountain only to discover there's another even taller mountain range in the distance. The text talks about the importance of what it calls full spectrum alignment.
Okay, full spectrum alignment. I'm all ears. What does that even mean?
Well, it means it's not enough to just have these like glimpses of unity, these moments of expanded awareness. We have to actually integrate that awareness into every aspect of our lives, our thoughts, our actions, our relationships.
So it's not a finish line, but rather like an ongoing process of growth and refinement.
Exactly. And that's where things like compassion, forgiveness, humility, they all come in. Because even at these higher stages, we're still human, right?
Right, we're not perfect.
We're still going to mess up. We're still going to face challenges.
There's still a work in progress.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But hopefully, with this expanded awareness, we can navigate those challenges with a little more, grace and wisdom.
It's like we're constantly being invited to step into a larger version of ourselves, to embrace a more expansive way of being in the world.
And that's a journey that's available to all of us. It's not about like what your background is or your beliefs. It's about tapping into that inherent light of truth that's always been present within us, even if it's been kind of hidden beneath layers of, conditioning and those limiting beliefs we've picked up along the way.
It's inspiring to think about. It's like this text is pointing us toward this path of like continual unfolding, of recognizing the infinite potential that exists within each of us. So it's not about becoming some like perfect enlightened being, but rather embracing like the messiness of being human while also recognizing the vastness of who we are at our core.
And that's where the text ends on such a beautiful note. It talks about how people at these like later stages, while aware of their own flaws and the ongoing work of growth, they also have this deep sense of peace, this almost cosmic patience with the unfolding of life.
It's like they've tapped into a deeper timeline where things are always working out, even amidst the chaos of the everyday world,
Exactly. And they describe this incredible sense of unity,
Yeah.
where those boundaries between like knowing and not knowing, between self and other, they just start to kind of dissolve.
There's that line from Julian of Norwich, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. It seems like that sentiment really captures the essence of what this text is describing.
It really does. And it points to this idea that this journey of self-discovery, of moving from concrete to subtle to causal, it's ultimately a journey toward wholeness, towards recognizing that divine spark that unites us all.
So it's not just about individual growth, but about tapping into something much larger than ourselves.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness to all things and living from that place of unity and love. It's about seeing the world through those purer eyes and realizing that even in the smallest grain of sand, we can glimpse the immensity of creation.
It's a powerful message, and one that I think speaks to something deep within all of us. This longing for connection, for meaning, for a sense of belonging to something greater than ourselves.
And the text reminds us that this isn't some far-off destination or anything. It's a journey we can all embark on one step at a time. By simply cultivating greater awareness, compassion, and a willingness to see the world and ourselves with fresh eyes.
It makes you wonder if we can truly embrace this expanded view of ourselves, if we can start to see that light of truth within ourselves and all beings. How might our relationships, our work, like our entire experience of the world be transformed?
That's the question the text leaves us with. And it's one worth pondering. What would it look like to live from that place of deep interconnectedness, of recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being, of seeing the world as a reflection of our own divine nature? That's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. It's a call to step into the fullness of who we are and to create a world that reflects that beauty, that connection, that boundless potential that lies within us all. And on that note, we'll leave you to dive deeper into these ideas on your own. Thanks for joining us for this incredible exploration.